Before we start the video, I want you to know that this story is full of destruction. It's no joke. Action, drama, romance, and some intense moments that will blow your mind. But before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all the greatness I'm about to deliver. Anyone who's watched this anime will get the point. Now, I won't keep you waiting. Let's dive in. One fateful day, a girl was sitting in a desolate place crying after losing her entire family and watching her village get destroyed. At that moment, her friend Kafka, who's been trying to comfort her and take some of the burden off her shoulders, was by her side. He tells her, "Mina, when I grow up, I'll become the strongest defense officer, and I'll protect you. I'll never let you be sad again, and I'll always be by your side." Mina, determined herself, promises that she'll also become a defense officer, and she'll protect Kafka too, never allowing anything bad to happen to him. Years pass by, and both Mina and Kafka grow up. Mina becomes one of the strongest leaders of the defense forces, loved and respected by everyone. But our boy Kafka? Well, he's kind of a failure. His physical strength is weak, and he barely manages to work as a cleaner for the same defense force Mina leads. After the defense squad finishes killing the monsters, Kafka's the one who goes and cleans up the monster remains. His life is a complete mess, literally. He's living in a rundown apartment with nothing going for him. He's even past the age limit to apply for the defense force, which means his dream of standing by Mina's side in battle is over. The next day, Kafka heads to work like any other day, but today there's a new recruit on the cleaning squad named Reno. Reno's dreams are just like Kafka's. He wants to join the defense force and become an officer. He asks Kafka, "Why did you give up? I heard you tried applying over 12 times and got rejected every time." Kafka responds, "There are some things that are just impossible for us humans. We're born like this, and no matter how hard we try, we can't overcome them. That's why I gave up." But Reno, determined, says, "I'll never give up no matter what happens. I have to become a defense officer." He leaves Kafka, but his words stay with him. Kafka's self-respect is shattered, and he can't help but cry to himself. That day, they go on their usual mission to clean up the monsters. Reno struggles at first, but Kafka helps him, even sharing some of his food and teaching him the basics. The day ends with Reno thanking Kafka, apologizing for insulting him earlier, and then sharing some surprising news. The defense force has extended the age limit for recruitment by 1 more year, meaning Kafka can apply again. "I noticed how you feel when you talk about the defense force," Reno says. Kafka is moved by Reno's words, but before he can respond, bam! A monster attacks from behind. It's about to kill Reno, but Kafka reacts on pure instinct, rushing forward and shielding him. He tells Reno, "Run now, go and alert someone about this monster's location, and I'll hold it off until you escape." Reno doesn't want to leave, insisting, "I won't abandon you, we'll fight this together." But Kafka refuses, telling him, "You have a dream to fulfill. I'll never forgive myself if you die because of me. Now run!" Reno hesitates, but eventually follows Kafka's orders, leaving Kafka alone with the monster. Kafka tries to escape by entering a nearby building, but the monster relentlessly follows him, breaking his leg and leaving him on the ground, helpless. In that moment, Kafka remembers Mina, their promise, and he's overwhelmed with sorrow, ready to accept his fate. But just as the monster is about to strike, bam! Reno returns, shouting, "I won't let you die while I'm here. If I can't protect you now, how will I ever be a leader in the defense force?" Kafka is shocked to see Reno back, asking him, "What are you doing here? We're both going to die at this rate." But Reno responds, "It doesn't matter. As long as I do what I can, I'll never give up." Together, they face the monster, and just when things seem dire, bam! Mina arrives with her squad, wiping out all the monsters in the area. She reassures everyone that there were no casualties and takes control of the situation, making sure everyone's safe. Kafka watches Mina in awe, filled with both admiration and sadness, realizing just how far apart they are now. He faints and wakes up in the hospital, his leg still broken, his dream slipping further away. Reno thanks him again for saving his life, and Kafka begins to feel a small spark of hope again. But just when things start to look up, a mysterious creature suddenly enters Kafka's mouth while he's sleeping in the hospital. Suddenly, Kafka screams in agony as he feels something strange happening to his body. Reno, hearing the noise, rushes to Kafka's side. only to find that Kafka's appearance has changed drastically. He looks like a monster. Reno, utterly confused, doesn't know what's happening. An old man who happens to pass by also sees Kafka's monstrous form and immediately calls the defense force, reporting what he's seen. Things are about to get crazy. Reno and Kafka stand there in shock, still processing what just happened. Reno warns Kafka. The old man called the defense force. You need to hide now. If they catch you like this, they'll kill you for sure. Kafka tries to calm himself down, but his monstrous body is out of control. His legs and arms are transforming, and he's growing large claws. Desperately, he and Reno try to hide, but Kafka's new monstrous form makes it nearly impossible to stay unnoticed. They run through the streets, dodging the defense force, trying to figure out what to do next. During their escape, another monster appears, this time attacking a mother and her child. The little girl struggles to save her mom, but is too weak. Just as the monster is about to strike, bam! Kafka leaps into action. Using his newfound monstrous strength, he punches the creature, sending it flying through the air. He's surprised by his own power, but knows there's no time to waste. Kafka quickly defeats the monster and checks on the mother and child, ensuring they're safe. For the first time, Kafka feels what it's like to be a hero, the feeling of saving lives. It's the feeling he's always dreamed of experiencing. But he knows he must remain hidden. So, he and Reno quickly leave the scene before the defense force arrives. As they flee, Kafka begins to gain control of his monster form, reverting back to his human self. He turns to Reno and says, I know what I have to do now. Let's get out of here. Days pass, and Kafka finally applies to the defense force. He's accepted into the first stage of the recruitment process, and both he and Reno are thrilled. Reno rushes to tell Kafka the good news, but when he finds him, Kafka is already dealing with another monster, in his monstrous form. Reno scolds Kafka, You're going to blow our cover! Change back! Kafka reassures him, Don't worry, there's no one around. This place is deserted. Reno then hands him the acceptance letter, reminding Kafka that he's made it past the first stage of recruitment. The next day, Kafka and Reno head to the recruitment center, where they're about to face a series of grueling physical tests. They encounter a tough girl named Kuruko, who seems to have a serious attitude problem. She demands that Kafka move his car, claiming the parking spot they're in belongs to her. Kafka refuses, teasing her about how many other empty spots there are. Kuruko doesn't take the insult lightly, removing her jacket and activating her combat suit. She lifts Kafka's car with one hand and throws it aside, leaving Kafka completely stunned. Who are you, and how did you do that? He asks. Kuruko replies, I'm Kuruko. You'd better remember my name because I'm going to crush you in this recruitment exam. Kafka, never one to back down, steps up and says, My name's Kafka. You'll remember me too when I surprise you in the exam. Kuruko smirks, realizing that this might be more fun than she expected. She leaves, but not without warning Kafka that she'll beat him in the test. During the physical tests, Kafka struggles. In every event, he's either the last or near the bottom of the ranking. Meanwhile, Kuruko is excelling, finishing in the top 5. By the end of the first round, Kafka ranks 219th out of the recruits, while Kuruko ranks 5th. As she stands triumphantly, she mocks Kafka, saying, It hasn't even been 2 hours, and you're already on the ground losing. I told you I'd crush you. Kafka feels humiliated but determined. However, the next stage of the recruitment exam changes from cleanup duty to actual monster combat. Each recruit is given a specialized combat suit to enhance their abilities. These suits increase strength based on the user's natural talent. Most recruits can extract around 8% to 20% of the suit's potential, but Kafka, unfortunately, extracts 0%. His instructor, Hoshino, laughs at him, joking, You're a miracle, Kafka. Meanwhile, Kuruko easily extracts 46% of the suit's power, proving she's a formidable recruit. Despite Kafka's struggles, the exam begins, and the recruits are sent into battle against real monsters. Kuruko charges ahead, cutting down monsters left and right with ease. Kafka, on the other hand, can barely move under the weight of his gear, and he's struggling to keep up. But instead of giving up, Kafka decides to use his knowledge of monsters to support his teammates. He points out the creature's weaknesses, helping his fellow recruits defeat the monsters efficiently. Just when things seem to be going well, a monster attacks Kafka, throwing him into a wall and injuring him. Hoshino, observing the battle, prepares to pull Kafka from the exam, as it looks like he's too injured to continue. But Kafka refuses to give up. "If I quit now, I'll fail the exam and lose my one chance. I won't give up, even if I die," he declares. His determination catches the attention of Kuruko, who jumps in to save Kafka from the monster. "I won't let anyone die while I'm here," she says, standing over him. With renewed energy, Kafka pushes through the pain and manages to extract 1% of the suit's power. It's a small improvement, but it's enough to keep him in the game. Hoshino and the other recruits are amazed by Kafka's sudden progress. As the battle continues, Kafka and Reno team up to defeat the monsters, working together in perfect harmony. As the battle rages on, Kafka and Reno continue to support each other. The monsters seem endless, but thanks to Kafka's strategic thinking and Reno's quick reactions, they manage to fend off the waves of enemies. Meanwhile, Kuruko leads the charge, using her powerful suit to annihilate anything that crosses her path. Just when they think they've gained the upper hand, a new monster appears, a much stronger one. This monster has regenerative abilities, making it incredibly hard to kill. Kafka quickly assesses the situation and realizes that simply defeating the creature won't work unless they destroy its regenerative organ. He shares this intel with the rest of the team, instructing them to focus their attacks on the creature's vital points. The Defense Force's leader, Hoshino, commends Kafka's quick thinking, but the battle isn't over yet. As the recruits fight with everything they've got, Kafka begins to feel the weight of his injuries. He knows that if they fail to defeat this creature, the entire team will be wiped out. Summoning all his remaining strength, Kafka rushes towards the monster's weak point. Despite the pain coursing through his body, he manages to strike the creature's core, delivering a decisive blow that stops its regeneration. The monster falls, and for a moment it seems like the battle is over. But before anyone can celebrate, a massive explosion rocks the battlefield. A new, even more terrifying monster has appeared, a kaiju-level threat, unlike anything they've seen before. It's clear that this creature is far more powerful than the others. As the dust settles, Kafka looks up in horror, realizing that this might be the end for him and his team. In the chaos, Reno tries to stay calm, but it's obvious they're all outmatched. "We're not strong enough to take this thing down," Reno shouts. But Kafka refuses to give in. "I won't let anyone die, not today," he mutters, transforming into his kaiju form. This time, however, something is different. Kafka is struggling to maintain control of his monstrous self. His human consciousness is fading, and the kaiju inside him is starting to take over. Kuruko and the others are shocked as they witness Kafka's full transformation. This isn't the Kafka they know. This is a powerful, uncontrollable beast. Hoshino, seeing the danger, orders the recruits to fall back. "We can't take him on like this," he warns. But before anyone can retreat, Kafka's monstrous form charges at the kaiju-level threat with incredible speed and force, unleashing a barrage of devastating attacks. The kaiju fights back, matching Kafka blow for blow. The ground shakes as the two titans clash, each one trying to outdo the other. Sparks fly, buildings crumble, and the recruits are caught in the crossfire. Kuruko watches in disbelief as Kafka, now fully consumed by his kaiju instincts, battles the enemy with unrelenting fury. For the first time, she's not sure if Kafka is their ally or if he's just as dangerous as the kaiju they're fighting. Reno tries to reach out to Kafka, calling his name in hopes of bringing him back to his senses. "Kafka, snap out of it! You're stronger than this!" But Kafka doesn't respond. The kaiju inside him is in control now, and it's taking everything Kafka has just to keep himself from attacking his own teammates. As the battle reaches its peak, Kafka manages to overpower the kaiju, delivering a final, crushing blow that destroys its core. The massive creature falls, and the battlefield grows silent. For a moment, it seems like the nightmare is over. But then, Kafka turns his gaze towards Reno and the other recruits. His glowing eyes, filled with primal rage, lock onto them. Just as Kafka is about to strike, a familiar voice cuts through the air. "Kafka, stop!" It's Mina, the Defense Force commander. She's arrived just in time, and her voice breaks through the kaiju's control over Kafka. Slowly, Kafka's monstrous form begins to revert back to his human self. Exhausted and battered, Kafka collapses to the ground, unconscious. The recruits rush to his side, relieved that the battle is finally over. But as they gather around Kafka, the defense force arrives. Without warning, they place Kafka under arrest. Mina, standing over him, points her weapon at his unconscious body and says, "You're under arrest for being a kaiju." Kafka, barely conscious, opens his eyes just enough to see his friends looking at him with a mix of sadness and fear. He knows that, despite saving them, he's now seen as a threat. "Do what you have to do," he mutters before passing out again. Kafka is taken into custody and brought to a high-security facility where the defense force begins their investigation. The leaders of the defense force gather to discuss Kafka's fate. Some argue that he should be executed for being a kaiju, while others believe he could be used as a weapon against other kaiju. The final decision rests with Commander Shinomiya, who insists on overseeing Kafka's situation personally. In his dark prison cell, Kafka reflects on everything that's happened. He thinks about his promise to Mina and the dream he's had since childhood, to stand beside her as a member of the defense force. But now, that dream seems further away than ever. "I won't give up," he tells himself. "I'll show them that I'm still human." Shinomiya enters Kafka's cell, accompanied by a few guards. Without a word, he orders the guards to release Kafka from his restraints. Kafka is confused but remains silent. As soon as his restraints are off, Shinomiya draws his weapon and points it at Kafka. "Prove to me that you're human," Shinomiya demands. "If you're really still Kafka, then show me." Kafka, stunned, doesn't know how to respond. Before he can say anything, Shinomiya attacks, unleashing a flurry of strikes. Kafka tries to dodge, but Shinomiya is too fast. He hits Kafka with precision, pushing him to the limit. "Transform!" Shinomiya shouts. "I know you can't control it!" Kafka, struggling to hold himself back, refuses to give in to the monster inside him. "I'm human!" he yells. But Shinomiya isn't convinced. He continues his assault, forcing Kafka to the ground. "I'm not going to stop until you prove to me that you're not a threat," Shinomiya declares, raising his weapon for the final blow. Just as Shinomiya is about to strike, Kafka's body reacts. His kaiju form starts to take over, but instead of losing control, Kafka manages to stop the transformation halfway. He looks up at Shinomiya with determination in his eyes and says, "I'm not a monster. I'm Kafka Hibino, and I won't let the kaiju inside me control who I am." Impressed by Kafka's resolve, Shinomiya lowers his weapon. "You've passed my test for now," he says. "But remember, if you lose control again, I won't hesitate to end you." Kafka is escorted out of the cell, and the decision is made. Instead of executing him, the defense force will use Kafka as a weapon against the kaiju. He'll be closely monitored, and any signs of losing control will result in his immediate termination. Despite the grim circumstances, Kafka is relieved. He's still alive, and he still has a chance to fulfill his promise to Mina. As he leaves the facility, Mina meets him outside. She looks at him with a mixture of sadness and pride. "You did well, Kafka," she says, "but this isn't over. You still have a long way to go." Kafka nods, knowing that the road ahead will be difficult, but he's ready. He's determined to prove to everyone, and to himself, that he can control the monster inside and use his power to protect those he cares about. Kafka is now officially part of the defense force, but under strict surveillance. His transformation into a kaiju is both a powerful weapon and a ticking time bomb, and every move he makes is closely monitored. Despite this, Kafka remains focused on his goal. He's determined to prove his humanity and show everyone that he can control the monster within. Meanwhile, the threat of the kaiju continues to loom. The defense force is constantly on high alert, as more powerful and intelligent kaiju seem to be emerging. Among them is the mysterious Kaiju number 9, whose intelligence and ability to communicate with humans make it one of the most dangerous threats yet. The defense force knows they must prepare for an inevitable confrontation, and they begin strategizing how to take down this new enemy. As Kafka continues his training, he's pushed to his limits, both physically and mentally. Hoshino, who once doubted Kafka's ability to control his kaiju powers, now sees potential in him. "You've got the power to change the tide of this war," Hoshino tells him, "but you need to learn how to wield it without losing yourself." Reno and the rest of the recruits are also working harder than ever. They know that the next battle could be their last, and they're determined to be ready. Reno, in particular, feels a deep responsibility to protect Kafka. "You saved me more than once, Kafka," Reno says during one of their training sessions. "Next time, I'll be the one saving you." However, the tension within the defense force is growing. Not everyone is convinced that Kafka is an asset. Some believe he's a danger to the entire team, and they argue that it's only a matter of time before he loses control again. Kafka overhears these conversations, and while they hurt, they only strengthen his resolve. "I'll show them," he tells himself. "I'll prove to them that I'm more than just a kaiju." As preparations for the next mission begin, Kafka is assigned to work closely with Kuruko and her squad. Kuruko, who once doubted Kafka's abilities, now has a deep respect for him. She saw firsthand the lengths he went to in order to protect his friends, and she's willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. "Don't screw this up, Kafka," she warns him. "We're all counting on you." The mission is simple. Eliminate a group of kaiju that have been spotted near a civilian zone. But things quickly take a turn for the worse when they discover that kaiju number 9 is leading the attack. This kaiju is unlike any they've faced before. It's fast, intelligent, and seems to be able to predict their every move. The defense force struggles to keep up. Every strategy they try is countered by number 9's cunning tactics. "This isn't like the others," Kuruko says, her voice filled with urgency. "It's like it knows exactly what we're going to do." Kafka, sensing the danger, transforms into his kaiju form, but even then he finds himself outmatched. Number 9 is able to evade his attacks with ease, and for the first time, Kafka feels true fear. "If we don't stop this thing, it's going to wipe us all out," he thinks, gritting his teeth. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Kafka comes up with a risky plan. He knows that number 9 is too fast to catch, but he realizes that the kaiju might be vulnerable if they can lure it into a trap. "We need to outsmart it," Kafka tells his team. "Follow my lead." Reno, Kuruko, and the rest of the squad trust Kafka and fall into formation. They begin a coordinated attack, drawing number 9 into a narrow corridor where it has less room to maneuver. As they close in, Kafka charges forward with everything he has. "This is it!" he yells. "Now!" The trap works. Number 9 is caught off guard, and for the first time, it falters. Kafka seizes the opportunity and delivers a devastating blow, striking the kaiju's core and bringing it to its knees. The rest of the team follows up, unleashing a barrage of attacks that finally bring the mighty kaiju down. As the dust settles, the team is exhausted but victorious. "We did it," Reno says, breathless. But the victory feels hollow. Kafka can't shake the feeling that this is far from over. "This was too easy," he mutters to himself. "There's something we're missing." And he's right. Before they can even begin to celebrate, number 9's body begins to change. It regenerates at an alarming rate, and within seconds it's back on its feet, stronger than ever. "No way," Kuruko gasps. "How is that even possible?" Kafka realizes with horror that they've fallen into a trap. Number 9 was never fighting at full strength. It was testing them, learning their strategies, and now it's ready to strike back with a vengeance. The team barely has time to react as number 9 launches a devastating counterattack. Kafka is thrown back, crashing through a building. Reno and Kuruko are knocked off their feet, and the rest of the squad is scattered. The kaiju's power is overwhelming, and it seems unstoppable. But Kafka refuses to give up. "I won't let it end like this," he growls, forcing himself to stand despite the pain coursing through his body. He knows that if they don't stop number 9 here, it will destroy everything: the city, his friends, and the entire defense force. Summoning every ounce of strength he has left, Kafka charges at number 9 once more. This time, however, he's not fighting alone. Reno, Kuruko, and the rest of the team rally behind him, refusing to let their friend face the monster on his own. Together, they launch a coordinated assault, with Kafka leading the charge. Reno uses his precision attacks to weaken number 9's defenses, while Kuruko delivers powerful blows with her suit. Kafka, in his kaiju form, delivers the final strike, obliterating the creature's core once and for all. Number 9 lets out a final deafening roar before collapsing to the ground. This time, it doesn't regenerate. The battle is over. Exhausted but triumphant, Kafka reverts back to his human form, collapsing to his knees. His body is battered and bruised, but he's alive. "We did it," he whispers, barely able to believe it. The rest of the team gathers around him, offering words of encouragement. "You were amazing, Kafka," Reno says, smiling. "We couldn't have done it without you." Kuruko, who had once doubted Kafka, nods in agreement. "You proved yourself out there," she says. "You've earned your place in this team." But even as they celebrate their victory, Kafka can't shake the feeling that this is just the beginning. The kaiju threat is far from over, and he knows that even greater challenges lie ahead. "I'll be ready," he tells himself. "Whatever comes next, I'll be ready." Kafka continues struggling to balance his human side and his monstrous form. Despite the immense power that comes with his transformation, he feels the weight of the responsibility to his teammates and the fear of becoming a threat to those he cares about. The battle intensifies as the monstrous side tries to take over, but Kafka is determined to keep his humanity intact. Meanwhile, back at the defense team's headquarters, Reno and the rest of the squad are training harder than ever. Reno, especially, is pushing himself beyond his limits, recalling Kafka's heroic actions during their last battle. He vows to become stronger, not only to protect the team, but to stand by Kafka's side when the time comes. As Kafka faces his inner turmoil, the monster form gains strength, nearly overwhelming him. Just when it seems like he'll lose control completely, he remembers his promise to Mina and the squad. Mina's voice echoes in his mind, urging him to hold on, to not give up. With this newfound resolve, Kafka manages to regain control over his body, just as the monster side was about to deliver a final devastating blow to Shinomiya. Shinomiya, realizing that Kafka is still in control despite the transformation, lowers his weapon and orders his men to stand down. He acknowledges Kafka's strength and, more importantly, his resolve to stay human. Although skeptical, Shinomiya decides to give Kafka one last chance, agreeing to use him as a weapon against the kaiju threat. This decision isn't without its consequences. Kafka is still viewed as a dangerous entity, but for now, he's spared from execution. The entire squad, particularly Reno and Mina, breathe a sigh of relief when they hear the news. They rally behind Kafka, vowing to help him in any way they can, knowing that their teammate is walking a fine line between heroism and destruction. However, the threat isn't over. Far from it. The final scene shows the evolving kaiju number 9 plotting its next move. Having learned much from its previous encounters with humans, it's clear that it has something far more sinister planned. As it allies with another powerful monster, the stakes are raised higher than ever. The battle isn't over. It's only just begun. With that, we conclude the first season of this thrilling anime. If you enjoyed the recap, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Stay tuned for the next season, where even greater challenges await Kafka and the Defense Force. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.